We were talking to Reed Gilbert in our last segment, and we also mentioned the write-up over at The Athletic this morning that was published just about 45 minutes ago, talking about the impact of Derek Stingley Jr. and Eli Ricks from just how good these guys could be going into the season. As we told you, Pro Football Focus has them ranked first and third, respectively, going into the season. Brody Miller and Jason Starrett have a excellent read if you're just looking for football facts. If you want to just dive into a football-heavy read of how good Stingley and Ricks are and what they mean to LSU's defense, I would advise you of getting over to The Athletic this morning and checking out the latest from Brody Miller. Lucky enough, we have a chance to dial him up this morning and catch up with him here on another week of the Jordy Culotta Show. Brody Miller, thank you for the time. Good morning, and thank you for the time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, as always.
Yes, still buzzing after last night's flag football championship.
Instead of The Athletic, dude.
That's right. We're still waiting on the feature story on the Baton Rouge Bruins. How good is Stingley perceived to be going into his money year of college football? This is the year, we were talking to his dad a couple of weeks back, Brody. I mean, this is the year ultimately they've talked their entire life about.
No, it's a great point. I mean, in terms of perception, yeah, I think, of course, there's going to be people kind of slightly wanting to see another great year, considering, he was banged up last year and whatnot. But, of course, he is, I mean, you look at the Athletic, Dave Brugler's, pre-draft stuff, and you look at ESPN, he is a consensus. Maybe, the quarterbacks will end up going higher, sure, but if you're looking at just overall prospects, he's one or two with Kayshon Thibodeau, you would assume. And, I mean, you've heard the same stories as me. I know that. I mean, I remember hearing in fall camp of his freshman year that an NFL GM, told an LSU staffer that Derek Stingley, before he even had played a college game, would go first round for them. Like that is just how, and a lot of credit to Derek Stingley Sr. there, just how ready this guy was. And my term I always call him is he's a football robot, and he is in good ways, in 99% good ways. He is a physical freak who thinks like a robot in terms of just high football IQ prepared. And yeah, his freshman film was as good as any, and his sophomore, by the way, wasn't bad. It was just banged up. Right. So yeah, I think there is just that. I don't think he has to do anything that changes anyone's mind. He just has to go out for one more year to prove just the absurd talent that we saw. I
still remember Dave Aranda talking about the Fiesta Bowl preparation, in which Stingley became eligible and was working out with them, and he called him at that time the best cornerback on that team and best defensive player. I mean, it was just the compliments that he was shown early on.
Didn't Coach O say he would play if he
absolutely.
could? Absolutely,
yes, 100%. I mean, they were shorthanded that day as well. So how good is Ricks?
Yeah, it's. And I want to say this, but it's something I just find really interesting. It's not even that it matters. It's the idea that, I mean, there's this weird trend going on the last 5 years at LSU, right? Where there's always a big name corner going into the season who has all the attention, and the other guy has the technically bigger year, right? Where it's like, Greedy Williams has, 6 picks, and when Dante Jackson's the bigger name, and then Greedy's the big name, and then Fulton has the better year, and then Fulton's the big name, and then Stingley becomes an All-American, and Stingley's the big name, and then Ricks has become an All-American. And this is kind of like the one year where they actually have both together at the same time. They're both coming back experienced and theoretically healthy, and I think that's going to be a really big thing, that there's, yeah, sure, I guess the middle of the field needs to get ironed out, but there's no target corner, really, which I think is a big thing. But, yeah, Ricks is obviously his interceptions are going to jump out. 4 picks, 2 for pick sixes and all of that. And I'm sure we'll get to some of these things later, but, I mean, some of his stats in man coverage are just kind of silly, where it's like he had more interceptions in man coverage than completions allowed in man coverage. It was 4. I mean, that's silly. He didn't have a single pass interference allowed in man coverage. And by the way, it's like a lot of the story talks about how man coverage could be good for LSU, and that's just one theory. I don't know what Daronte Jones is going to run and all of that. But what they just do is they just allow you to have play man coverage more, which every single metric over both the Aranda years and the Pelini years show that LSU was a whole 2 yards per pass attempt better against man coverage and zone, and they get better pressure against zone. And college football setting says, yeah, if you have your outside corners locked up that means you need less help in pass coverage, and you can send more guys pass rush. So, I mean, some of this stuff is obvious, but still, yeah, Ricks is a guy, and he still looked raw as a freshman. So I think he's a guy who is only going to get better, and with a healthier Stingley, it's just going to make everyone better.
Do we expect the addition of Daronte Jones, an NFL defensive backs coach, coming in now as the coordinator to LSU, to significantly improve these guys' play?
Of course, I mean, I think it's a fair thought. My only counter, and it's not an argument, is that, you know, in terms of just cornerback coaching, they pretty much already have one, right, in Corey Raymond. Yeah. You know, I mean, that is good as developing as anybody. But I think what Daronte Jones is going to really, just the buzz that you hear and just the expectation from me is I think what he's going to really improve is just that overall stability, communication, confidence in the back end. And communication, of course, has been the buzzword. But I think the whole secondary cohesively is going to look better as a unit. And that is going to make everyone look better. It's going to make everyone feel better. And I think that's going to be big because it's funny how, I mean, it's weird how I'm talking about a lot of these positive stats from last year, right? But the defense was a disaster. But outside wasn't. Outside, those corners, when they were together, were fine. They really weren't a major problem. I mean, shoot, I even pointed out one stat when they were on the field together. I think that the average depth of throw went down a whole 3 yards, which is just massive. They went from 10.6 to 7.6. So that part was always fine, and that's what made problems so jarring, is that you have these two guys and you're still getting torched downfield on some of these throws and all that. So I think what Jones is going to do is lead to less of those coverage busts, lead to improved safety play overall, lead to everyone just knowing what they're doing a little bit more. I think I've said in your show like 3 times already, I don't know what kind of, you know, schematic genius Jones is going to be. I have no idea, but I do think there's just going to be an improved confidence and stability back there, and that's going to make everyone better, because if you can just stop those coverage busts, that secondary is as good as any.
Where does Cordero Flott fit in this situation? A lot of people are very high on him. The year before the Alabama tape, everyone was so ecstatic for him. It was kind of disappointing. Do you think he has a comeback season?
Yeah, you have to at least wonder if he is, you know, and I hate lazily throwing too much on Pelini, but you almost do wonder if he is one of those casualties of just looking extra bad last year in the defense system and whatnot. Yeah, I think one year you'd assume he's pretty much penciled in as the starting nickel right now, and he is a good coverage corner. And he's also one of those guys who, you know, I don't have stats in front of me, but those last few games of the year, you know, we always talk about Jay Ward stepping up those last few games, but I remember Cordell Flott making some plays those last few games and looking a little more aggressive and stuff. But yeah, I think you'll see an improvement. I mean, his 2019 season, like you said, I remember Dave Aranda at one point, he had told the broadcast team, and they mentioned it on the game, that basically there was a point in the season where they graded Flott as their best coverage corner. You know, a team with Fulton and Stingley and all those guys. So I think he's a great coverage corner player. I know Derek Stingley Sr. speaks really highly of him, and I do think you'll see an improved year. You know, he's one of those guys that I don't know what his ceiling is. I don't think he's, you know, a Stingley or a Ricks or anything, but I think he's a very solid nickel corner.
Obviously, with the coverage busts last year, a lot of it fell on who played. It seemed to like almost go all the way to the back end to who played safety. And, you know, because you have the corners there that you just talked about that are absolutely locked down. Is the move for Jay Ward to go to safety to shore things up, along with the addition of Todd Harris to kind of be the signal caller back there and, you know, I guess like a field general?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. I mean, just to keep beating a dead horse. Yeah, I mean, it's just anyone you talk to in that building, it's just the common theme, and this was during the season, even before Pelini was out, that it was just Pelini's scheme required a little bit more on the safeties, but then safeties would just mess up so much, and that so then the corners would actually look like they're giving, like, there were so many plays where it looked like Jay Ward gave up a 50-yard touchdown at corner, and then you talk to somebody in the building, and they're like, no, he was just chasing down because the safety just didn't get the guy he was supposed to, and it just happens so often. So I do think and, you know, Mo Hampton's gone, Jacoby Stevens is gone. I know Todd Harris is back, but, you know, he was off and on banged up. And I think, you know, it's basically an entirely new group back there. And I think Jay Ward just adds a level of stability, adds a level of just playmaking savvy and kind of ranginess that I don't think they had last year, quite frankly. You know, I think obviously he's a corner, so he has those skills, but he has this kind of, like, I refuse to use any honey badger words because in no world am I even putting that same realm of a player. But like that same kind of hoppiness that I like, that I don't know, that ranginess that I like a lot. He has that a little bit, and I don't know what to expect from Harris. You know, I still have to sit there with the prove it to me thing with him. But the idea that Harris is your safety option is pretty nice because then you have safety knowing. Oh, maybe Sage Ryan will earn that job, or maybe Derek Davis does, or maybe Jordan Coles does, or Major Burns. But the idea that like Harris is the boring option to get to your point with Ward is, I think, a victory that you can mix the stability with the maybe one of those high upside guys can feel.
Brody Miller, author over at The Athletic, with a great piece that was published this morning detailing Derek Stingley Jr. and Eli Ricks' impact on the LSU defense. If you are not subscribed to The Athletic, I urge you to get over there and get your subscription for the offseason.
Go do it.
And heading into the football season, at least follow Brody Miller on Twitter if you're not already doing that for LSU coverage, at Brody A. Miller. You were on Shay's information yesterday. We talked a little bit about it before we had you on the latest of Arik Gilbert. It seems like things are trending in the direction of getting the big tight end back into the program and back in school.
Yeah, it's the thing that I think we've all, and you have, we've all been hearing it. We've all been kind of hinting at it. So I just want to go as far as confirming Shay's report and your reporting. But yeah, it's all true, right? But yeah, it looks like Arik Gilbert is in pretty far along talks with LSU, and a lot of now it just seems like it is semantics. It's getting that coursework done, and 6 hours is the word we're all hearing. 2 classes worth of coursework. That seems pretty achievable in the next few months, and that's just huge. It changes the outlook of a team right there in some ways, right? Where it's like, hey, you have one area you're kind of worried about at tight end that's a quote unquote weakness, and all of a sudden you're adding one of the most talented players in college football to that. It's you can't really put your finger on that, and just think about how much easier life gets for Max Johnson or Miles Brennan to know that you have Kayshon Boutte and Arik Gilbert there. So I think it's just crazy. But anyway, sorry, to your point, it really does seem like it's coming together, and obviously there's a lot you got to worry about there. You do have to get the academics straight and make sure they stay straight. You do have to just, some general off the field things and just kind of keep a stable environment there. And I think there's a lot that LSU has to achieve, but that anyone would have had to achieve. And I think stability is what Arik Gilbert needs, though. So if they can get that for him, great. He's as talented of a kid as you're going to see.
I want to go back to Derek Stingley Jr. just for a second, because I don't think there's ever been, I don't want to speak in hyperbole like this, but I don't think there's ever been a marriage of the intelligence and ball skills and the absolute freak athleticism that he possesses. What's his comp at the next level? Has there ever been a corner really with that set of skills?
Oh man, that is a great question. It's almost one that Jordy might answer better, but because there's not many things like him. He's just you're saying he's that mental with the physical. I remember when he was 17 years old, interviewing him at his house for an hour or two, and it was like talking about his ability, and then someone made a Deion Sanders comp at some point, and then he corrected me, and he's like, no, I think a little bit more analytically about the position in Sanders, and I'm like, you were not a normal 17-year-old. But Jordy, if you have a comp, jump in. I'm trying to think of a perfect one here.
I think Gilmore at New England.
Ooh, I like that. Higher upside Gilmore, maybe.
Yes, just when his body style, he's differently built.
He's thick.
He is. He's athletic. He's just not like a lot of those guys at that
young
position.
Patrick Peterson.
I even think that Peterson's
he's more polished than Patrick was.
And he's a little bit more twitchy.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
What about a longer Revis?
Yes.
Ooh.
Revis is somebody that jumps to mind just because of the technique.
Right.
When you hear people break down Stingley Jr.'s technique, that baffles football minds of how great and how precise he is with shoulder placement and inside foot stuff, things that you and I don't even can even fathom of looking for or looking at when we watch the game, and just how detailed he is. But I've heard people talk about Gilmore as being a fair comp just because of the length, the athleticism, and the ball skills. If the ball's in the air, it's Stingley's.
Just go watch Auburn first half before the half. That'll tell you everything you need to know about his ball skills.
Really and truly, the 8.5 over under Vegas put out on LSU. If you were at the window, which way you going?
This is not me being an LSU beat reporter. It's just, that just seems like an actual common sense over to me because the baseline for a lot of people in a lot of ways is 9-3. They're more talented, and then just from a pure, even if you don't want that high on LSU, just from a schedule breakdown point of view, and that's really what these over-unders are always really about, is schedule breakdowns. And yeah, I mean, you have, yes, maybe factor in a loss to Alabama, but Auburn and Florida, so you expect to take a step down, and they're both at home. So LSU, you would think, are like a 4 to 7 point favorite in those games. Yeah, A&M's a toss-up, sure. So maybe if you want to count that as a loss, it's 10-2. But in theory, LSU should be favored in the other 10 games this season. Yeah, maybe bake in another loss, but 9-3 is the baseline, I think, of expectations. So I just think that's a no-brainer over for me.
Yes, it feels very comfortable at 9-3. Feels like the comfort spot. Brody, did you ever get to a point, and this is our last one, we'll get you out of here. Thank you very much, as always, for your time. Make sure you get over to The Athletic and read the latest write-up from Brody on Derek Stingley Jr. and Eli Ricks. You people know that, you LSU fans know that you've got two great lockdown corners, but if you want to look at the numbers and the impact of what they really mean on the defensive side of the ball, you got to read this piece, the latest from Miller. Did you ever think that you would see a day, and full disclosure, you are an Indiana alum and an Indiana diehard. Did you ever think that you would see a day where the head football coach at Indiana is making more than the basketball coach?
No, there's absolutely no human possible way I ever would have expected that. It's I always put this people, because Indiana football fandom was always like a sarcastic thing. There's not many other sports comps to that, where it's like, it's not like, oh, I'm negative. No, it's literally sarcastic. Like, you just know it doesn't matter, so you're having fun with it. And all of a sudden to be like, you know, a top 15 team and to be expected to be good for a third straight year, it's nonsense. And Tom Allen is just kind of, he's real life Ted Lasso, man. He is just, there's not a lot of genuine guys. There are not a lot of genuine coaches, and you guys know that as well as me, you know, that just really mean it. And that guy lives and breathes what he preaches. He actually loves his life. He's a fascinating guy. It's a fun time to be an IU alum.
Y'all got to protect that man. He's getting injured in every celebration, dude.
I know, right? But you know what? That's part of the charm, you know?
That is part of the charm.
If he breaks his leg celebrating, he's getting a 5-star the next day. It's worth it.
Brody, great write-up, great work as always, and thank you for your time, man.